Hey Dude,
The 90s Called,
with Christine Taylor and David Lascher.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Hey Dude, the 90s Called podcast. I am Christine Taylor.
We're doing last names. I'm David Lascher.
Why not? I don't know. I just it rolled off the tongue.
How are you? Welcome back, everybody. How you doing, Christine?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. Jill is away in Europe visiting Hannah.
Oh.
So Chelsea and I are on our own, which is going very smoothly.
Love
But
it.
Chelsea films her YouTube channel every weekend, once a week. And so the idea she has right for this Sunday is to take care of 24 dogs in 24 hours. And I'm like, Chelsea, like I'll get you to school on time. I'll make sure everything is taken, I'll help you with your homework, but I can't, where am I going to get 24 dogs?
Wait, so is the idea that it's one dog every hour and then you're just doing an all-nighter? Or is it that you do like 6 dogs every 4 hours? See how good I am at math? Is that good?
6 times 4.
6 times 4. 6 times 4, guys.
Very impressive, Christine.
I'm snappy. I'm quick.
No, it's when you shoot a YouTube video, it's like she spent the night in Target for 24 hours, right? But she only spent like 2 hours there, and they shoot it like it's 24 hours. So
you're not supposed to be telling all this. You're not supposed to be disclosing all these secrets, David.
I don't think Chelsea's audience is listening to our show.
Oh, you don't? You don't?
The YouTube videos aren't always.
The cool teen kids listening to our show? Come on.
I should actually have Chelsea post our video. But yeah, so she wants to have 24 dogs here, maybe for like 2 or 3 hours. And they'll pretend like it's morning, breakfast, and afternoon and night. But I'm like, no, there's going to be poop and pee everywhere. Ooh. And I don't know.
Yeah, I think you have to draw the line. I think that's a Jill job.
Jill needs to be here. Yeah.
It's a Jill job. Let Mom handle that one.
How's your family? Everyone okay?
Everyone is good. We have, some college applications have been in. There's college auditions happening. We're in that a bit. Thanksgiving is coming up.
Yeah.
Already planning what I'm going to be cooking and baking. And
you host Thanksgiving?
We host Thanksgiving. Yes.
That's a big job.
It is a big job. And COVID for the couple of years was very small and, just immediate family. But it's like about, I don't know, 18 people, something like that. Not huge, not like 50 people. But I do cook.
Do you enjoy hosting? I mean, some people love it.
I do like it because we only do it once a year. That's enough. That's enough for me.
You lean into it.
I lean in for the day. So that's where we're at. It's, but I don't want to segue, but our guest is in the waiting room, and this is a guest that is like, it means so much to us.
Yeah.
I think as our Nickelodeon
kindred spirit, right?
For sure. Marc Summers, who I just feel like is how I remember Nickelodeon. When I first heard of Nickelodeon, it was to me, it's Marc Summers' face, right?
He started it all. We followed his lead, and Double Dare was the first big show for Nick, I believe, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh. And there's so many things we want to ask, but he's in the waiting room. So should we bring in Mr. Marc Summers?
Let's do it.
There he is.
All right, Marc Summers, welcome to our show.
Welcome.
How are you?
I can't help but look at you and listen to you. And you, to me, as David and I were young Nickelodeon, like we were newbies when Nickelodeon was just starting out. But you, to me, are the face and voice of Nickelodeon. Like, period, end of story, close the book, done. Mike
You're
slam.
very kind to say that. People say that to me. I guess I was the voice of a couple of generations over there, first with Double Dare and then What Would You Do and various other things. It was right time, right place. And the impact that Double Dare had back in the day was quite impressive. And I kind of didn't even realize it until the last couple of years when people your age and even a little older come up and say such nice things. We did one last tour right before COVID, and we were filling, huge auditoriums with people. And it was fascinating to hear the comments and the impact that show had.
Absolutely.
But how did you come to find Nickelodeon? You started as a page at CBS?
Oh, yeah, that's 100 years ago. That was when I moved out. I was going to school in Boston. I came out to L.A. in 73, I think it was. And, at the time, I thought I was going to take over Johnny's place on The Tonight Show, as many of us did. And so I was a professional magician. And so I started working at a place called the Magic Castle. And then I became a regular at the Comedy Store in 1976, started with Jay and Dave and Robin and Gary Shandling and folks like that. Was doing warm-ups on TV shows and actually had one step out the door. Got into, it's a too long a story to go into and not that interesting, but I had a smoked salmon business that was doing really well. And a friend of mine who was a ventriloquist that I knew back in Indianapolis, where I was from, got the original phone call to do the audition for Double Dare. And he decided he wanted to be behind the scenes and no longer in front, and said, hey, I've never heard of this network. I don't know what it's really about, but why don't you go instead of me? And I did. And they had already auditioned 1,000 people in New York City, came to LA. I was the first to audition and had 3 callbacks. And, in September of 86, they called me and said, I got the job. And it changed my life, and it actually put Nickelodeon on the map.
Are you a member of the Magic Castle?
No longer, but I was 100 years ago when I first came out here. That was the way I made a living. I was, at the time, I was working the castle, and that was in 73. I became a regular doing 4 shows a night, 7 nights a week. So 28 shows a week, making a whopping $145. But I was glad to have it at the time. My rent for my apartment in Sherman Oaks was $125 a month. So between what I was doing on that, and my wife was a dental assistant making $400 a week, we were able to pay the bills. I don't know how anybody does it anymore because everything's so expensive, and it doesn't seem like the salaries have gone up that much,
Well, just for our listeners to know, the Magic Castle is an elite, a membership of the greatest magicians in the world. And my only time there was because my brother-in-law's son is a magician. And
oh, really?
And he's a member there. Yeah. And I got there and they wouldn't let me in because I wasn't wearing a jacket, a sport coat.
Yes. Coat and tie, still to this day, I think it's the only place in California that requires that. Why, I have no idea. But yeah, it was a fun time. I mean, you gotta pay your dues. You gotta do all these kind of jobs that when you think back, you ask yourself, why did I do it? And I did it to get noticed, to be seen. And also, people come to me all the time and say, how do I get to do what you do? How do I become a host? And I say, you got to host things. You got to put yourself on stage and perform as much as possible. I mean, you guys know that. The more you're in front of an audience, the better opportunity you have to be seen and get to the next step.
Yes, I have a friend who still to this day says who's not discerning about a lot of the work because she says work begets other work. Like you're out there, you meet somebody, and it's so true. Whether it's a small kids party or the Magic Castle or whatever it is, you make connections. Do you still practice magic? Is it still?
Not so much. It's one of those things. When it was a hobby, it was fun. When it became a way to make a living, not so much. And I never really wanted to be, a professional magician. There were people who were so much better at it than I. But I used it as a means to get from point A to point B. I was more interested in doing stand-up, and I was actually opening for a guy you may have remembered. His name was Gallagher, and I was working at a place called the Lascher in Newport Beach, California.
Oh, he would like smash fruit and stuff?
Yeah, that was a guy. And he came to me and said, how much are you getting paid to open for me? And I said, $150 for the week. And he goes, yeah, you're out of your mind. I said, why? And he goes, because you do props. And I'm thinking, well, this is the biggest prop comic out there. And he's telling me I use props. But he said, as a magician, I was considered a novelty act. But as a stand-up comic, put me in a whole other world. And I was getting paid half of what the comics were. And so with that advice, I slowly weaned my way out of the magic world and started doing just stand-up. And sure enough, doubled my salary as a warm-up act.
Oh, fantastic. This friend that did not want to be in front of the camera for this for this show called Double Dare on a network that no one had really heard of, right? Nickelodeon. Right.
Yep.
When he said, "Why don't you go instead of me?" Was it just that simple? Did you go in under his name, or did you just say
What's funny? because I don't think you could even do what I did that day.
That's what I was thinking. Right?
Yeah, they said Dave Garrison. I said Dave couldn't make it. My name's Marc Summers. Can I audition instead of him? And they went, yeah, sure. Now I don't think
that's a great move.
Allow that today.
That's such a good move. I love it. I love that you just were honest about it.
I can't believe I never thought of that.
It's great.
Leonardo DiCaprio can't be here today, but I'm going to step in.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. And the other thing I did, which was something I learned from somebody, that I always got the name and phone number of the exec producer and the casting director, and they actually would give it to me. And what had happened was I had 3 callbacks, and I knew they were going to start shooting in end of September. And it was a few days before Labor Day, and I called Mike Klinghoffer, who was exec producer, and I said, hey, what's going on? I haven't heard from you guys. He said, funny you just called. We were just talking about you. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, it's between you and another guy. But, back when we did the auditions, we had grown-ups playing the part of kids. And they said, we don't know if you're any good with kids. And I said, well, I have to. And they said, yeah, it doesn't mean anything. And I said, well, I used to perform magic shows for kids. They said, yeah, what does that mean? So I came up with the concept. I said, why don't you fly me and this other guy to New York, put us in a studio with real live kids, play the game, and let the best man win. He said, I'll call you back in an hour. And he did. And he said, what are you doing over Labor Day? And I said, coming to New York and doing another audition for Double Dare. And he said, yeah. So me and this other guy, to this day, I don't know who it was, flew back. And we each did the show in a studio with real live kids. And 2 days later, I got the phone call from Klinghoffer saying, congratulations, you're the host of Double Dare. And I said, well, let me ask you a question. I know you auditioned 1,000 in New York and 1,000 in L.A. Why did I get the job? And he said, well, quite honestly, you and the other guy were about the same. But at the end of his audition, he looked at the camera and said, is that all you guys want me to do? Or what else you want? But I looked in the camera and I said, we'll be back with more Double Dare right after this. And because I threw the commercial, they thought that was more professional. And that's how I got the job.
Wow.
Yeah.
That one choice that you made, probably right, spur of the moment, it changed everything.
Changed my life, put Nickelodeon on the map. And, I was a student of game shows, and I, from watching, knew that you just didn't say, what else do you want me to do? You threw the commercial. And that's what I did. And it was kind of a revolutionary thing to do at the time.
So you get the job.
Yep.
And it was the show written out and sort of, set up exactly the way we know it to be, or did you help shape the what the show is?
I was the only person who had any game show experience there. Nobody else did.
So you created it. In other words,
I didn't create it. Mike Klinghoffer and Jeffrey Darby, Dee LeDuc, and Bob.
Wait, hold on. Go back. Jeffrey Darby?
Yeah, of course, he was our Jeffrey Darby at Nickelodeon.
And Brown
too.
Johnson. Oh my gosh, dude.
Yeah, all those people. We all worked together. And so I had experience. My first real job was writing a show called Truth or Consequences that Bob Barker was hosting back in the day. But I had written many game shows. I had worked. Bob Barker had a production company. I worked for Bob, and so I had a lot of experience. And they had the format, but I had more of the know-how. And it was a combination of their creativity and Alan Silverberg, who was our head writer, who was brilliant and still is to this day. It just was a magical time. It was kind of like being in a college dorm and screwing around, laughing our asses off and getting paid for it. And it was, at the time, UHF TV was big, and Facts of Life and Different Strokes were the number one shows. And then all of a sudden, their ratings went down. Nobody could figure out why. And it was because there was something called Playground Talk. Kids would watch our show and say, gee, I saw a guy jump into 5,000 pounds of baked beans today, and then he won a trip to space camp. And they went, well, what the hell is that? And they say that there were 3 people responsible for cable in its early days as far as subscribers. One was Larry King on CNN, because nobody knew, what that was back in the day. Gallagher, who had specials on Showtime, and that was revolutionary because nobody did that. And me, because a lot of kids would go to their friends' homes who had cable and finally convinced their parents, hey, there's this new network called Nickelodeon. Will you subscribe to it? And so we sold a boatload of subscriptions. The other thing that's funny is, ratings are so tiny now. If you get a 0.2, people are jumping up and down. We used to get 5s, not 0.5s. We used to get 5s. And on snow days, it would explode. I mean, we were beating shows all over the place. And we had a huge following on college campuses. on days off, I would go to the Letterman show in New York and hang out with Dave and everybody because they loved our show. It was just such a weird time.
Yeah, I mean, Christine and I talk about that. We didn't know anyone was watching Nickelodeon. I think we started a Hey Dude in 1989, right? But I feel like, and I've said this before, that like Nickelodeon was the Snapchat and TikTok of its time. It was the kids, they owned it. No parents allowed. This is our content. And looking back on it, it's no wonder it blew up. There was nothing specifically for kids like that. And
do you remember the phrase, "the place where only kids win" was the slogan? And that was huge. And by the way, my daughter's favorite show was Hey Dude. She was into that show like crazy, and it was on in our house, every evening. And once again, revolutionary. I mean, I think you guys had $1.80 for the budget.
About that, yes.
And I remember talking to Darby about it because you were shot, I think, in Arizona, I think, right?
Tucson, yes.
Yeah, Tucson. And I remember that whole experience because I was working on a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff with Darby and Klinghoffer and all those people, Brown, Jerry. And so I kind of knew what was going on, but I never actually got it's funny. I don't think I ever got a chance to meet you guys.
I was going to say through the years, because we would meet some of the other Nickelodeon stars, so to speak, but I don't think we ever met you. I would have remembered it, and I'm sure I would have had a picture to boot.
We started in Philly, and then we went to New York, and then back to Philly, and then we moved on to the Nick Studios in Orlando. And I guess, I don't know, were you guys not there for the opening of the Nick Studios?
We were. I was there, but I think we were all sort of being used in different capacities, right? Like we were hosting some hour and then they probably shuffled you in to do another section. And yes.
Used was the key word there, by the way.
Wink, wink. Exactly.
And we presented at the Kids Choice Awards, right, Christine?
Yeah, we did that one year. I think that was the year the show debuted. We did.
And I did that one too.
Mark, how many times have you been slimed?
Too many.
Really? Because Christine and I have slime envy. We've
never been slimed.
Oh, that's crazy. I can't believe that. You're not missing anything. I've been out about the fact that I have obsessive compulsive disorder. The first 65 episodes, I never got a drop of anything on me. My shoes were totally clean. My suits were clean. And the show exploded. And they did a focus group. And the focus group said that they wanted to see me get messy. So I get a phone call from Klinghoffer, and he calls me into his office. He said, they love the show. They love you. They think you're some crazy uncle or something. But we have to make some changes. And I said, what's that? He goes, you have to get messy. And I said, why? And he said, kids want it. So starting episode 66, it was their mission to get me slimed, full of whipped cream, whatever it was. And it just became part of my job. And, it worked out fine.
And was it just more hours with a therapist working through that? Yes, because that must have been very challenging.
Well, I didn't really get diagnosed until the late 90s. I was hosting a talk show on Lifetime called Biggers and Summers, and we had a doctor on, Dr. Eric Hollander, and I was doing the research the night before, and I never even knew what OCD was. And so I kind of came out of the closet and, spilled my guts out. So I did all of the Nickelodeon years without any therapy, any medication out of, anything. Nothing existed back in the day. And it wasn't until I was doing my talk show that I came out and started talking about it. And the next thing I know, I'm on with Howard Stern and Oprah and the Today Show. And that was a whole other part of my life.
Wow.
I feel like I have OCD. Wait, so when you got slimed during your OCD, was it traumatic? I mean,
no, know what? Here was the deal. All my life, I wanted to host a TV show, and I wasn't going to let anything get in my way. Right. And so if they would have said, we've got to pour a bucket of dog poop on you, I would have said, great. I wasn't going to give up this opportunity, and I was able to overcome whatever issues I had at the time. Now, did I want to take a shower immediately afterwards? Yeah, and I did. But I defy anybody to look at those shows and say, there's stupid stuff online. I hate the internet. He hated every minute of it. No, I didn't. I had it was the coolest job I ever had.
Right.
You seem to be enjoying it. I mean, that's the way I remember it is you were like everybody's uncle. It was like
you were the crazy uncle.
You were a part of it. You were the one. You were the puppeteer. You were.
Yeah.
But wait, can we clear something up? Did being slimed on Nickelodeon exist prior to Double Dare, or did it originate on Double
You
Dare.
can't do that on television is where it started.
Right.
That's what it was.
I don't know.
I remember that show.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that. You're right.
I get all the credit, but it wasn't me. It was
right. You can't do that on
Darby
television.
brought that show in from Canada.
It was a Canadian show, right?
Yeah. 100%.
What was the concept of Double Dare? Like, explain to our listeners what was the show about?
The show, I'll do it for you. I'm going to ask you a question. If you don't know the answer, think the other team doesn't have a clue, I'll dare you to answer it for double the dollars. But be careful, they can always double dare you back 4 times the amount, and then you either have to answer that question or take the physical challenge. There's the show.
Okay, now I have major anxiety.
That is
What do you
in your DNA, right? You can just say that. That's
over and over.
Oh,
well, I did it. Well, initially, we shot 525 episodes, and then we brought it back a couple of years ago with a lady by the name of Liza Koshy, and I was exec producer and her sidekick. That's a whole other story. But yeah, it just came back to me instantly. I mean, when you do it that many times, it never leaves you.
So it was a quiz show, basically.
Yeah, it was a quiz show. They found out that kids were playing a game on the playground called Truth or Dare. And they basically took questions and added physical challenges because kids love getting messy. And, I didn't even know about the obstacle course because when I did the audition, I did the questions and we did some physical challenges. So I walk into the studio in Philadelphia that day, and there's a guy pouring a boatload of chocolate syrup and whipped cream on a slide. And I said to him, "What is that?" And he goes, "Well, that's the obstacle course." I said, "I don't know what that is." He says, "Well, whoever wins gets the most points or most dollars. If they can run all 8 obstacles in 60 seconds or less, they win prizes." And I stupidly said, "Do you really think kids want to get messy?"
No, probably not. Wait, you had a slide with chocolate syrup and whipped cream?
Oh yeah. Oh, that was
I
easy.
mean, dude, that's a no-brainer. I mean, of course it was a hit show.
Of course.
Did your kids want to be on it, or were they ever on it?
They wanted to be on it more than life itself, but because of the rules, they weren't allowed to be. But I sneaked them on a couple episodes. I would, quote, pull kids out of the audience. A couple of times I pulled my own kids out of the audience and had them demonstrate physical challenges.
Oh, that's so perfect.
Yeah, and some obstacles. And they're now, my son is 42 and my daughter's 40. So it was a while ago.
I think of that when like David and I, for us, when Hey Dude, we were working in this bubble in Tucson, Arizona. And then when the show came out, and we would appear at some of those Nickelodeon events, we knew people were watching, but it was a different level of, sort of stardom or fandom because of Nickelodeon. It was just beginning. And so what I found was it was like a decade later, and I would come across, people your kids' age, like you said, your kids who were like 10, 15 years younger than me, but they looked like they were out and about in the world and working, and I like a grocery store clerk because I was a huge fan of Hey Dude. And
hey, did you guys ever do any of these autograph shows?
No.
I just did my first one a couple of months ago. It was freaking sane.
Like a convention. Yes.
And people standing in line all day to have pictures taken with you and sign autographs and stuff. I was there for 3 days. And you know who makes the most money of all these? Steve from Blue's Clues makes a fortune.
Oh, Steve from Blue's Clues.
Oh,
wow. Oh, I remember Steve.
That's my kids' early years.
Of course.
Yeah, and the nicest guy you'd ever want to meet. He just was fantastic.
We just got a letter. We just got a letter.
So I was there with Joey Fatone and I don't know all these people, and it was just crazy. It's the first one I'd ever done, and I don't know that I want to do a lot of them because it was exhausting, but it was quite an experience because everybody has a story about doing an obstacle course in their living room and having their parents yell at them because they poured coffee grounds on the obstacle course in their couch and stuff like that. And I've heard every story. And the thing about it is, if these people are paying a boatload of money to come in, first of all, to the convention, and then paying even more for pictures and autographs, they deserve time. You can't just say, "Hey, thank you," and move on. You got to hear stories. And thank heavens there's people there at these conventions who sort of move them along. Otherwise, you'd only sign 10 autographs because everybody just wants to talk.
Yeah. Well, I think for us, like when we talked about doing this podcast, there is such a hunger for 90s nostalgia. Like there really is, you know, it's those who watched it. And David and I've talked about our kids they're so intrigued by it. Like, you know, there's so many shows being rebooted, or they're going back and watching the original shows from the 90s that, you know, we all kind of came up knowing about. And so I can imagine these, that's why these conventions are so huge. It's just it's sort of like being able to go in a time machine and revisit your youth or those memories that formed you and shaped you.
Is Hey Dude playing anywhere these days?
I think
on
Paramount Plus. I think it can be streamed. Yes. For a long time, it was hard to get. It was hard to find. It was, now it's easier, but
it must have been so cool to work for Nickelodeon as they erupted and became successful. I mean, it was really the explosion of cable TV, right? I mean,
100% it was. And, you know, we toured it. I mean, we started off doing shopping centers, and we drew so many people on a weekend that the mall would be upset because we would block the entrance to Macy's or whatever. And then somebody came up with the idea of doing it in arenas. And I was playing.
Oh, my God. Arenas?
Yeah, I was doing 25,000 seat arenas, selling them out, doing Double Dare. It was just insane. I toured it for about 8 years. And I can't even begin to tell you what that's like to walk out into a crowd and have 25,000 people, you know, screaming. I was like a rock star for kids. And so who knew that it was going to turn into that, you know? And then I produced a Guts tour as well with Mike O'Malley. And so, it was a great time because there were no, you know, they did focus groups, and they found that the kids were watching Price is Right vicariously to their parents because they didn't have their own game show. And as soon as we gave it to them, that's all they needed to see and hear. And at one point, all Nickelodeon did in the afternoons were game shows for a couple hours every day. And, you know, I still say that they're missing the boat, that if they did 2 hours of cool game shows on a nightly basis, kids would go crazy because they don't have that.
That's true.
Christine, we talk about that we had no idea how many kids were watching our show because no one knew what Nickelodeon was. Like, you know, it was, I didn't even know everyone had it, but now looking back, right, Christine, the fan base for Hey Dude is so passionate.
Oh yeah.
You know, those kids in those years in the early Nickelodeon days are so attached to the programming that they consumed, and we had no idea at the time.
And they could still sing your theme song, believe me.
That song, especially.
One of the best themes.
And something tells me that I think it was our music supervisors or the guys who just scored the show weekly from our, you know, this little production company in Knoxville, Tennessee. That was our producing team. Everybody was sort of, you know, transplanted into Tucson, Arizona. But these guys created something, and I'm sure don't see a dime for it.
I guarantee you that.
My guess. Mark, I have to ask you, and I'm sure this is the thing you get asked about so much, but as we were...
Hold on, let me predict. The Tonight Show.
I have to, because I just watched it. It.
How did he know what you were going to ask him? That's
because when you see this, David,
the Burt Reynolds thing?
Yes.
Yeah. What the hell was that?
Mark, to me, you are brilliant. I mean, the back and forth, like that is I think a study in improvisation, and like it was the quickest thing I've ever seen. You, both of you, the one-liners, the zingers, but how did that feel? Like it's shocking. And now it's not so shocking because we've seen, you know, the slap heard around the world. But that was like that. It was like
it was, and people thought it was set up. And I always say I'm not that good of an actor. I couldn't have done that. And Jay called me the next day, and what was going on with you guys? It's like I was a stand-up comic. That was my background, and I wasn't going to let this jackass screw up my, you know, appearance on the Tonight Show. And he was a jackass, and the next day I was over at a friend's house who knew his publicist, and he said, "Want me to call Burt's publicist and see what he thought?" And I went, "Yeah." And he said, "Burt said I was a bottom feeder of show business and I didn't give a movie star any respect." He was a jerk. And it just was what it was.
He was so disrespectful, first of all, because it was he had his interview and you came out. And by the way, you do keep sort of turning to him and you're engaging both of them. And then
can you guys, Christine, explain what happened?
No, let Mark explain because he lived it. He lived it. But
Mark was.
You do have to watch it afterwards, and you are going to want to show everyone because who hasn't seen it already. But I cannot wait to show it.
Google Marc Summers Tonight Show with Burt Reynolds, and you'll see what we're talking about. Basically, I had been bumped for a year. I was booked, and then they called me the night before and say, "Well, we're overbooked. Next time." And after a while, I just didn't believe I was ever going to do the show. And I finally got the show, and got there. And Burt was on a book tour. And was surly and not happy. And he was supposed to do 2 segments. He ended up doing 3. And backstage was me and Carrot Top. And they said, "We're bumping you again, and we're putting Carrot Top on." And my publicist said he handled Jason Alexander at the time, and they wanted Jason to become a regular. And he said, "If you bump Marc Summers, Jason Alexander's never doing the Tonight Show again." So they said, "Oh, my God, okay."
Oh,
so
I love that.
On. And Carrot Top and I still talk about it to this day. And, what occurred was craziness. And I was trying to get my, 6 minutes with Jay and finally getting my wish of growing up watching The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson and, wanting to do it with him, and ending up doing it with Jay. And all hell broke loose. And the next thing I know, he's throwing water at me and pies come out. And it's just a mess. But as I was driving home, I called my wife and I said, either the best thing in the world just happened to me or the worst thing ever happened to me. And here's the best news. People still talk about it. On a weekly basis, I'll get stopped on the street and people want to ask me questions about it. And it's on globally still to this day, and I still get paid. So, it was 84. No, it was after that, maybe. Maybe it was 86, 89. I forget. It was easily 30 years ago. And, it pops up on the internet twice a month.
I know, but dude, you held your own. He was probably the biggest movie star in the world, right? At the time?
At the time, sure.
And you stood right toe to toe with that dude. And that's respectable. Looking back at
you come off like a gem in the situation because he was the big star
and you were young.
All you wanted was your moment with Jay. You were referencing him. He makes a comment that you've been talking with your back to him, like not giving him the respect. When he throws the water on you, and it's just like without it, then it just becomes, and you're hanging in there, and you're like, Jay's lost all control also. But
you had no idea what he was doing. It was early on when he started the show. And when he hit me with the water, I thought he broke a tooth of mine. I mean, he hit me very hard with that. The pie hit me very, very hard. And at one point, I said to the audience, Burt Reynolds just hit me with water. And he said, I don't know, someday you'll appreciate it or whatever. And he put his hand on my hand and I said, "Don't touch me."
Yes.
Okay. And the audience screamed. God. And then I reciprocated finally and got him back with the water. And what you guys don't see is the audience gave me a standing ovation. They hated him so much that when I did that, I got a standing ovation. Now, the camera obviously doesn't take that shot, but they love the fact that I got back at this jackass.
No. It is really just you. You come off incredibly composed in a crazy situation, and that is like, to me, as a person, that moment where, because as the second guest, or wherever you were at that point, you're somebody bigger than you has come before, and you're just trying to get your few minutes. And like you said, it was a dream your entire life. And I just feel like it's one of those things you had to live it, and I'm sure, like you said, it was either the best thing or the worst. But it is because all it does is sort of illuminate this awful side of Burt Reynolds that
it never goes away.
It doesn't go away.
It's so interesting that still, survives after everything I've done.
Oh, my gosh. No, I had to ask. Because I hadn't seen it. It was not even something, on my radar. And I'm just good on you. That's what I really just wanted to say.
Don't you guys love when you can look back at your younger self and have respect for your younger self?
Yeah. 100%.
The balls that you had to sit in there with him and not take his shit. I mean, he's the biggest movie star in the world. Like today, you'd probably be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, Tom Hanks. Like, throw water on me." But your 25-year-old self was like, "No way, man."
Yeah, it's interesting when you look back and see the early stuff. I mean, the first stand-up thing I ever did was on a show called Norm Crosby's Comedy Shop, and it still holds up. I mean, I did a sketch on Donnie and Marie.
No way. Oh my
back
God.
in the day, I mean,
I loved the Donnie and Marie show. I loved it.
Yeah, and I was on with Bob Hope and Lucille Ball, for God's sakes. I mean, that was crazy. But that's what you did back in the day. Whatever you could do to put yourself. I did small parts on a TV show called Soap, which I eventually ended up doing the warm-up on. I'm trying to think of some of the early stuff that I did, but, had to pay the bills, and the phone rang, you took the job. So I'm doing warm-ups on a show called The Mac Davis Show, who was a singer back in the day. I was at NBC, and the producers came to me and said, they're looking for somebody to do a small part on Donnie and Marie, but you have to sing a song. So can you sing a song? And of course, the answer is always yes. You just lie. I couldn't sing worth a damn, but I said, sure. Mm-hmm. So the next day, I went over to KTLA Studios where they were doing Donnie and Marie, and I brought a bucket with a bunch of rubber ducks, and I sang Rubber Ducky, the worst you've ever heard. And at the end, I picked up the container with all the ducks and I poured the water all over me. Okay. And Art Fisher, the director, came up to me and he said, that was perhaps the worst audition I have ever seen in my entire life. But by the fact that you had the guts to do it, I'm going to give you the job. And that's how I got it.
You have to make a mark.
Yeah.
For better or worse, right?
They got to remember you.
You don't want to just blend in.
Christine pours water over herself at every audition.
Oh, always. Always.
Every time.
That's hysterical.
I do remember, though, back in the Nickelodeon days, like we had just done this first season of Hey Dude, and they had the kids talk show. I want to say, is it Don't Just Sit There? Don't Just Sit There.
I produced it for a while.
Okay. So, and they would bring on the Nickelodeon stars onto that show. I'm sure they had would get other guests, but that was my first talk show. And I was 17 years old, and it was horrendous. Like, telling a story, and it's kids in the audience too, of course. So there's no nuance. I think every other word out of my mouth was like, and I was a kid, but it's become a running joke in our family because I've found it somewhere on some reel that my dad had probably transferred from VHS tape.
Oh yeah.
Please send that
DVD.
to me.
And I tell the story about how shooting in Tucson, Arizona, because it was so hot, the crew did a funny bit and took one of those Pillsbury dough rolls and put it in it baked because the Tucson was hot, like the bread baked. And I thought the story was going to kill. Just crickets. Just crickets.
I don't know if you remember this. You were too young, but they shot Don't Just Sit There in the worst part of New York City at the time at 33rd and 11th. And there were nothing but hookers and transvestites hanging on the
Was that Hell's Kitchen?
Well, no, Hell's Kitchen is a different place, but this was just the most miserable place. And we always used to have like security guards and the parents, because otherwise, you were being asked to go and sit in somebody's car and do something you shouldn't have. So, I
had to have gone there for it. I would have no memory of it because I probably lived in so much fear of just let's take the taxi cab and get out and go in. And but yeah, that was my first talk show memory.
Amazing.
Mark, do you still do stand-up at all or no?
Not so much. Here's what I've been doing. About 12 years ago, I always wanted to do Broadway. That was my big dream. I wanted to be on Broadway, except I knew I couldn't act. And so I've been talking about it for years. And I got cancer, and then I got in a car accident and broke every bone in my face. And I thought, well, geez, twice I came close to death. How much longer am I going to, talk about this and maybe not get it done? And so I talked to a bunch of friends in theater, and they said, all I've known since I met you is that you want to do Broadway, but you just do it already. So I had met a guy in a bar in New York City who told me that he was a Broadway producer. And I said, well, I want to be on Broadway, but I know you're not going to do that right off. And he said, well, I just bought a theater, summer stock theater in Long Beach Island, New Jersey. I don't know what we're doing this summer, but give me your number. And if there's anything that makes sense, I'll call you. So a month later, he calls me. He said, we're doing Grease. Do you want to play Vince Fontaine? I said, do I have to audition? He said, no. And I said, I'll do it. So I went I went and rehearsed for a couple of weeks, and we did it for a month. And while I was there, I met a guy by the name of Drew Gasparini. And Drew now writes a bunch of stuff on Broadway, but he introduced me to a guy by the name of Alex Brightman. Alex now has been the star of Beetlejuice, of School of Rock. He's currently on Broadway doing The Shark is Broken.
We saw it. I love him. We had the best talk with him after. He's a fellow.
Wait, is that about Jaws? The Jaws?
Yes.
It's
Alex
oh my God.
wrote me a one-man show.
Wait.
And
This is blowing my mind, Mark.
Oh, my God.
And so we first did it about 8 years ago in a place called Bloomington Playwrights Project. And then we did it at the Adirondack Theater Festival. And it sat dormant after a couple of years because of COVID. And then we brought it back this summer. We did it in Pennsylvania. And I just got back. We did a month of it in the Alleyway Theater in Buffalo, New York. And I can't talk about this just yet, but soon I will have a large announcement to make about the life and slimes of Marc Summers. But so theater is kind of my dream.
That is incredible.
So cool.
And by the way, can we go right back to the fact that you said yes to doing Vince Fontaine because you didn't have to audition, which I love.
Right.
But that saying yes to that job in Long Beach Island leads you to the next person that you met that leads you this is such an incredible story. Alex is incredible. He is.
So did you go backstage and talk with him? Or
we went backstage, and
nice.
he lives in the neighborhood up here. So he said we've passed each other, and I keep looking for him now walking his dogs, but he's so talented, and we exchange numbers and everything because my son is going into the college auditions and theater, and Alex is like, call me if you need anything. He was so kind to our son. And
where does he want to go to school?
He's looking at New York City schools. He's looking in Boston. He's figuring it out, nervous about all of it.
The best advice that as a parent you'll hate, okay? Tell him not to go to college.
Oh, don't tell me that. Don't tell him. That's what he wants to do.
Pay some rent and just go to auditions because nobody's ever asked me if I went to college. Okay,
of course,
nobody cares. They just want to know what you can do. And if you have a resume that has, and you know this, college is good if you want to grow up, mentally and 17 other things. Maybe some people need it for maturity. But my daughter ended up going to Emerson for 4 years, and I'm glad she did. But I always said to her, just go get a job as a waitress and audition. You'd be much better off.
Well, it's really interesting that you say that because that was the path. Ben went to school to UCLA for 9 months. David and I did not go because we were doing Hey Dude. We got the show out of high school and the show went on for a couple of years. But that's what our kids have always said is like, you guys didn't go and it worked out. My thing is because this is the son who started high school during COVID and had 2 years almost of isolation, definitely going and starting and then seeing where the journey takes him is important for us. It's important to sort of get out and be independent, all of those things, because I think COVID took that away from, so many of
generation. I agree. But stay in touch with Brighty. He's the best. He's the smartest guy. He's a brilliant actor. He's going into spam a lot in January. He just goes from job to job. He's never out of work, and he's a brilliant actor. And by the way, he's an amazing writer.
Well, I'm gonna shoot him an email, and I really when the next opportunity to see your show, which I hope to hear the announcement with the rest of the world whenever that is. But we cannot wait to see it, and congratulations! It's it's so wonderful to hear. I'm so excited about it. You're making it. You're manifesting it. You're making the dream come true after how many years of talking about it, right? Well, forever. I was having lunch with Bruce Valanche. I don't know if you know Bruce. Bruce was starring in Hairspray at the time, and he's the one who said, "Summers, stop it already. Get off your ass and do it." Do it. And it was frightening. I can tell you two stories. One of which was I got called to audition for the starring role of Big when it was going to Broadway. And I get the phone call,
And the guy calls me and said, I want you to play the lead. And I go, why me? And I said, I can't sing, I can't dance, I can't act. And he goes, I don't care. He said, at the time I was doing Double Dare, and he goes, every kid in America will beg their parents to come and see you. And he said, quite honestly, it's all about asses in the seats. So that's what I want you to do. So after months of working with a vocal coach and an acting coach and this and that, the day of the audition, I didn't go. I was too scared. Then fast forward the tape, I was obsessed with the producers. And this is much too long a story to go into, so I'll tell you the Cliff Notes version. But I got to meet Mel Brooks, and Mel asked me to audition. He said I looked like Bloom, and he wanted me to audition for the tour, and set up vocal lessons in LA and one thing after another. And the day of the audition, I didn't go because I was scared out of my mind. And the fact that there I was hanging out with Mel Brooks and talking to him, and he was encouraging me and was behind me to do it. I wasn't ready. But I am now, and it took me this long to get to this point. And
wow, you had an audition for the producers for Mel Brooks, and you didn't show up.
I didn't go. Yeah.
Wow, wow.
And fear, I mean, it can completely take you over, and it can paralyze you, and you just say, I'd rather not do it and take the risk, because it's the fear of failure. It's the fear that I'm not going to get it. I'm going to embarrass myself. All of those things, right?
A friend of mine, Will Schreiner, we did stand up together, got an audition for the lead in Will Rogers' Follies, and Tommy Tune was directing. And Will did all the stuff that you do. You prep and you go to voice lessons and all stuff. And the day of the audition, he stood on the stage and couldn't remember one word. And Tommy Tune walked up to him and said, calm down, you're going to be fine, this and that. And finally, he just said, I can't do this. Now, he was a brilliant stand-up, funny as hell. But putting yourself in a different situation that you're not necessarily comfortable with doesn't work for everybody, And it took me this long. I started doing Life in Slimes 12 years ago, so I was 60. So it took me till I was 60 to have enough nerve to stand on the stage and do a one-man show.
And sometimes it takes those no's that way that you say you live with it, and then you're like, screw it. I'm saying yes. I'm doing this. I don't care. Right? I
said something a lot worse than screw it. Trust me. But
but Mark, you said someone else that wrote your one-man show. What is that like? How do you have someone else write your one-man show? Do you dictate? Do you just sit with him and interview and walk?
For a year, Drew Gasparini, Alex Brightman, and I went to dinner, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week. And they would just ask me questions and I would tell stories. And so after about 18 months of going to dinner and telling stories, I see Brightman and he hands me a script and said, here's a one-man show.
No way. And, you didn't even know that he was writing the whole time?
Oh, no, I knew. That was the mission. Because when I first met Alex, I said, I want to do a one-man show. And he said, you can't do a one-man show. What was the term he used? He said something about, I'm not interesting enough. And I said, you have no idea anything about my life. And he said, well, tell me about it. And that's when we started the dinners and started to do this stuff.
Oh, my God.
He said, I'm not compelling. He said, nobody would come to a show for you. You're not compelling. That's what he said.
And you don't want to take that too personally, but you also do take it personally. So you're like, yeah, come to dinner. I'm going to tell you how compelling I am.
Yeah, no,
Listen, I feel like everybody on this planet has a one-man show. I don't care what you do. Everybody has an insane story. Everybody.
100%. I agree 100%.
And Mark, I just saw an old friend of mine, Jeff Ross, has a one-man show. And he had a preview the other
comic,
night.
Jeff Ross?
Jeff Ross. Yeah, the Roast Master.
Oh, he's hysterical.
The Roast Master, yes.
But he takes you on an hour and 45-minute journey through his life where I'm telling you that I cried. I laughed my ass off. But when he talks about having to put his dog down, all these different things, I was literally in tears. And it was like the power of one person and a microphone and an audience is so amazing. It reminded me of that. So
where was he doing the show?
Well, it was at the Improv on Melrose, but he's bringing it to theaters around the country, and then hopefully to Broadway. It's one of the best things I've ever seen. It was like the Billy Crystal one.
700 Sundays.
Yes, it was like, wow! I forgot people could do this. Just one person for 2 hours.
Nice,
Christine. We have to go see his show.
Yeah, he's funny as hell. Yeah, he has been for a long time, and I bet he's got great stories. He's got great presence. He knows how to deliver,
Yeah, he was looking at his notes. It was a preview, so he's still working it. But my God, man, if someone can make you laugh and cry in the same set. It's like, it's so powerful.
Not that easy.
So it's not that easy. And it's also, you're there with you. Like, to me, you don't have a scene partner. You don't have a crutch. You don't
nowhere
have
to hide, man. Yeah.
It's kind of like the epitome of vulnerability, right? Like, here I am, raw. This is it. This is me. And I'm really excited for you.
Me too.
Big congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for coming out. Mr. Nickelodeon. I mean, I'm sorry. It just is what it is for me. Like, you are always going to be, like I said, the face and voice of Nickelodeon.
Yeah, we rode your coattails.
We really did.
We really
did.
universe.
Thank you.
You guys did all right on your own.
Thank you for giving us a job.
I appreciate you saying the kind words. I don't have to tell you. How long have you guys been doing the podcast?
Almost a year. Just under a year.
It's really tough. It's research wise. And I tell you, I get asked to do these all the time, and I generally say no. But I listen to you guys. Here's the problem. I get asked the same 3 questions over and over again, and it gets boring after a while. But you guys took it in a whole different direction. Maybe because we have a lot in common to the Nick days and all that other stuff, and you're looking at it from a different perspective. But you're just good. You play well off of each other. You ask intelligent things. You listen, and it ain't that easy, as you know. I started my podcast about a year ago, and I do all the research on my own, as I'm sure you guys do it on your own. It's just like, these things don't have big budgets, and you don't have producers writing stuff for you. So unless you're inquisitive, chances are it's going to suck. And the problem is, everybody is in their bedroom with a microphone and they think they can do it. And 99% of them cannot. Trust me, you guys are great at it. And I wish you continued success. And I appreciate you asking me to be on the show.
That's so sweet.
That's so kind. Seriously, man. That means a lot. That means a lot to us.
It really does. I mean, David and I, it's been such a joy for us to be able to reconnect at this point in our lives, 30 plus years later. Like, we were teenagers when we first met and got to know each other. So a lifetime has passed, and now, so it's been a joy for us. But we both said, like, the people that we've been able to talk to, and some of them are old friends, some are people we've never met, but like, to be inquisitive and to just human connection. I just feel like we had so many, that COVID time when we all got to be with our families for many hours,
whether we wanted to or not.
Whether we wanted to or not. And now it's just like, it's so wonderful to just get to know people and hear their stories and connect. It's really
Who's the one person you'd love to have on the show, but you haven't been able to get yet?
We have a few.
For me, Andre Agassi.
I was going to say 10. We've got some 10. Like, Serena is somebody that we haven't been able to get. And so
we have had no athletes. And I mean, think of the 90s athletes. Like, there's a whole world that, but next season 2 next year.
I just did Greg Louganis, and he was fantastic.
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh, I loved Greg Lee. I love him.
Mark, what's the name of your podcast?
Marc Summers Unwraps.
Marc Summers Unwraps. All right.
And it's all about, here's how it started. You watch a movie or a Broadway show or a TV show and you go, boy, the person who's doing that, they're the luckiest people in the world. And the whole point is, no, they weren't lucky. They had so many ups and downs and trials and tribulations. And the question is, why do some people move forward and other people just give up? And so my podcast is all about people who overcome obstacles and why do they choose to do it? And I mean, Kevin Pollak was on. He was brilliant. We've had some really good people on, and got some good people coming up as well. But it's just so fun to talk to these people. And, we all have these folks that we want to meet and have on. And I find it's more difficult in my eyes to do what you guys are doing on Zoom. I prefer to be in the studio talking to these people, but you guys have this mastered. I'm not that good at it yet where I can do some stuff, but in the room, because I'm an old school broadcaster and I like sitting across from somebody and kind of grabbing questions out of it. But it's not always that easy. And plus, you guys are in New York, you're in LA, you're all over the place. Where the hell would you do it? So
but we do. The couple of times we've had that, we did get Carson Daly in person. Like, it was a world. Like, so We're still of the we're not a Zoom generation, David and I. We're the generation of being in the room, and it's just we're doing our best with it. But our dream is when we are ever in the same city to do as many as we can when we can be together, because there's nothing like it. It's just but it's a different kind of conversation, and it's just being face to face. It just is so much more intimate. But
my producer's rule is, unless it's Jesus or Obama, you got to come in the studio. So
Obama you'll do on Zoom, and
him and Jesus, but
and Jesus.
Yeah.
Well, on that note.
Yeah, Mark, thank you so much, buddy.
Talk to you guys soon. Take care.
Okay, bye.
All right, thanks, Mark.
How is that the first time we met Marc Summers?
I don't know.
In all of our Nickelodeon years.
We must have been in the same
here's
events.
my guess, because I would have had a picture. I was, I always had pictures of everything. That we were probably in the vicinity of him for a Kids' Choice Awards or the opening of Nickelodeon Studios. Just never like the introduction, never like the meeting or the moment.
Right. Yeah. The opening of the Orlando studio. If he was there, we were there.
We were there. Yeah.
Yeah.
What a great guy, and what a terrific story. Like, I just, I feel like it's so funny. He reminded me a little bit of Jamie Kennedy from A Different Generation, of just saying, like, just showing up to that meeting, even though he didn't have the appointment, and just saying yes to everything. He doesn't,
My friend can't be here, but I'm going to audition in his place.
Exactly.
Who does that?
Who does it? It's so bold, but really, really fascinating guy, and did really truly make Nickelodeon. I mean, really did. Yeah,
Double Dare was the first big hit, right, for Nickelodeon.
Yes, and like he said when he talked about that Broadway producer who talked to him about doing a show, it's like kids worshipped him. I mean, they really did. Like, that was their go-to. That was
right. He was like Carson Daly for MTV, I feel like.
Yeah.
He was a little bit older than the audience, but not too much older, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like he said, that like the kind of the cool uncle.
The cool uncle. Right.
What did Carson say? He said, like, I was the
gatekeeper.
The gatekeeper.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He was like, I was the doorman for Justin Timberlake and NSYNC.
Oh, man. Well, that was great. We've got thank you, everybody, for joining us. We've got another great guest, or guests, plural, coming up next week.
Next week is epic. I'm so sick.
Yes, it will be a really fun one. So join us. Come back next week, and everyone have a good week. You too, David.
You too, Christine. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And we'll see you and listen to you next week.
They'll listen to us.
They'll listen to us.
We'll listen to them through chats, through comments.
Thanks for listening. Make sure to subscribe and give us 5 stars.
And please follow us on Instagram at HeyDude, the 90s Called. See you next time.